All right, well, thank you much. Let's take a live look at 696 in Oakland County. And today we are talking about car crashes on Michigan roads. Michigan State Police released new numbers showing traffic crashes and deaths on state roads went up last year. Let's take a look at those numbers. This is a look at the number of deadly crashes from the last 5 years. Last year, there were more than 288,000 crashes, which is 927 more than the year before. Unfortunately, the number of deaths also rose slightly, with 1,099 deaths compared to 1,095 in 2023. 2021 was the year we saw the most crash deaths with 1,131. Now, while 2024 was not the worst year, the numbers are still worrying for police. Joining us to talk about the numbers, Lieutenant Mike Shaw with the Michigan State Police. You, in your career, have seen everything at this point. And when you look at these numbers and the data, is there a story behind them? Does it tell you something that we're not seeing?
You know, I think the biggest thing, I think anybody that's seen me on TV, seen me on our X account, anything else, is driver responsibility.
Right.
The biggest thing that concerns us is all these crashes are preventable. And we're seeing the big three, as I always call it, excessive speed, driving impaired, and driving distracted.
Right.
Those are the big keys. And if we could get people just to stop being impaired behind the wheel, stop speeding, we would probably knock these numbers down way below 1,000. So that's usually what we see is a lot of driver error and a lot of driver responsibility that needs to be done to get these numbers down.
You know, what I found interesting was there recently has been a push by both the Michigan State Police and MDOT to stop referring to these as accidents and as crashes. And that's because, as you mentioned, they're all avoidable, most of them anyway.
Almost all of them. I think in my career of almost 31 years now, wow, I'm old, all those times, you know, that I've seen maybe one accident during that time when a tree fell of the grace of God onto a car. Everything else is a crash. Somebody did something, or both drivers, or all the drivers did something that they shouldn't have been doing behind the wheel. And, you know, we saw, again, we talked about the crackdown on impaired driving, and we still saw over the weekend, you know, again, you know, impaired drivers. We saw somebody going too fast and rear-ending a car. Commercial drivers, we're seeing our semi-truck crashes are starting to rise again because of just following too closely. So our goal is zero crashes, right? It seems pretty tough right now, but it's really not if we could just get people to really think about what they're doing behind the wheel, leave earlier, wear their seatbelt. We're seeing a lot of people not wearing their seatbelt again, being ejected out of cars that they would have survived out of being killed on there. So we're seeing our seatbelt use go down as well. So what happens inside that car is our biggest cause of our crashes.
Well, what I wanted to ask you kind of on that note is that you see the technology and the safety standards from the automakers getting better and better every year, but we don't see the number of deaths dropping. There was, you know, some, but not as many as we thought. Is that because the accidents are getting more intense and more violent, or is it because, which ties in, that we're so distracted that then the crash is that more intense?
I think that some of it is the distraction. We've seen our work zones, and you know, Michigan is the home of construction. Right? There's no argument about that. I mean, we see that, but we continue to see our crashes in work zones continue to rise. And that's not only cars in the work zone, but our construction workers as well. So we know that there is an element of distraction in there. And we have to even consider the fact that even if you're on a hands-free, which is Michigan is a hands-free, it still takes your mind to think about what's going on inside that vehicle. So we see a lot of people that are still distracted by what's going on. And it may be something as simple as, you know, we've all had the kids in the back seat, you know, that kind of gets you a little bit, and you know, somebody in the passenger side talking to you and things like that. So
it takes you out of that out of the zone, so to speak.
And that's the biggest problem. And then for some reason, it seems like Michiganders think driving is competitive. There's no...
I've never heard it put better before.
There's no stickers on your car. There's only one person in the area that has a sticker on their car, and that's me. There's no stickers on there. So if you leave early, you take your time, you know where you're going, you drive the speed limit, put your seatbelt on, put the phone down, these crashes would reduce dramatically.
You know, something I've noticed, and I'm sure you have too, especially the morning commute, it seems like the traffic is moving so much faster than it used to. My commute takes me down I-94, and I made a stop this morning, and around 5 o'clock in the morning, if you're doing under 80, it feels like you're impeding traffic. Have you noticed that?
Yes, so we have seen that during that time period, and it's always funny because when people come up and talk to me, it's never that person's driving that's the problem. It's always the other person.
Yeah.
Oh, I would drive the speed limit if everybody else did. And we kind of want to think about that and change that philosophy, right? Is how about you drive the speed limit, and the more people that actually drive the speed limit will point out those that aren't, and it'll make enforcement easier. Right? We go by the 85th percentile when we set our speed limits. That means 85% of the traffic is moving at that speed, and that's where the speed limit gets set. And then we can focus on those other folks that aren't doing the speed limit. But right now, no one's doing the speed limit.
Right.
So, you know, and I always tell people, if I'm the one that keeps you doing the speed limit, there's a problem behind the wheel.
Yeah.
You need to want to do the speed limit because it's safer for you, it's safer for your family, it's safer for the other drivers.
Shouldn't have to slam on your brakes when you see the red light on top of the blue car there.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. We're going to talk more about those workplace crashes, the work site, because we've had a lot of issues there. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. A live look again over 696, where we were digging into the recent crash data from Michigan State Police. We talked about the number of crashes we're seeing in the state, plus how many of them have turned deadly. Now we're going to kind of dig into the concerning numbers regarding the types of crashes that we saw. School bus crashes increased by 6%, and alcohol-related deaths went up 3% to 307. Work zone deaths went up 17%, 28 people dying in work zone crashes last year. And another worrying trend, teen driver deaths, which increased 17%. 77 teens died in crashes last year alone. Again, Lieutenant Mike Shaw with the Michigan State Police here. You've said it over and over again, distracted driving. Is that the reason for all these numbers too?
Some of it, then the impaired driving as well. You know, with marijuana now having been legalized in Michigan, we're seeing that impaired driving start to uptick. And a lot of times you only see the alcohol side of it because people are double dipping, right?
Sure.
You'll sit at home, maybe smoke a joint or two, then you'll go out and party and have alcohol, and only the alcohol one kind of shows up. But we're seeing both sides of it, and you know, part of it is education. Back in the days of the beginning of drunk driving, you know, is all education. It affects your driving.
Yep.
Now we're doing the same thing with marijuana because there's a lot of marijuana users out there, kind of put on by pro-marijuana people, that it doesn't affect your driving, and it does. So we're seeing that as well. But again, the distraction, especially in these construction zones that we're seeing people, I mean, when you get knocked down from 3 to 4 lanes down to 2 lanes, and then you got what people call the wall of death on both sides. If you're not paying attention what's going on, when that crash happens in there, it usually is deadly because you're either striking an object that doesn't move, or you're striking a construction worker that you know has no protection from those vehicles inside those zones.
I know you have been at the scene of many of those crashes involving work zone, construction workers. I can't imagine what that is like. It's bad enough that you have a crash, but now somebody who is just trying to do their job and just make our roads better is gone because of it.
And that's the sad part about it is, you know, it's like having your office, but you have a 2-lane freeway running through the newsroom here.
Right.
I mean, it's like, you know, just being out there is dangerous enough, and then when people aren't paying attention, and when they see the speed limit, you know, 65 or 45 and workers present, but we all drive past those electronic signs that they have out there, and you see speeds of 80, 85.
Right.
Again, all preventable. So that is our hope. If we keep kind of harping on these drivers out there, that maybe, you know, they'll start to think, all right, I don't want that to be me, or I don't want that to be my family member.
Right.
That maybe they slow down.
You'd mentioned marijuana. I wanted to circle back to that. I know that has been a difficult task for law enforcement in terms of the benchmarks and the measuring and helping people understand that it affects everybody differently, and that the time frame is so wide there. How are we doing in trying to manage that?
So we're looking at impairment, and I think that's where people kind of get thrown off. It's not, that you had marijuana in your system. There has to be something that goes with it. So with alcohol, they've established scientifically that everybody is impaired at 0.08
Right.
blood alcohol. So that's pretty simple. Now you can get arrested for impaired driving under 0.08 if you're impaired or your impairment shows it. There is no scientific standard in Michigan for how much marijuana or THC is in your blood system. But what they do is they look at impairment. It's the same thing. So if I'm driving behind a driver and they're weaving all over the lane, or they run through a red light, or they get in a traffic crash, and you go up there and you start talking to them and you notice that they're kind of moving back and forth and they got the red blood, bloodshot eyes. They can't pass certain field sobriety tests.
Right.
And then they have THC in their system. That's how that arrest works.
I see.
So it affects you the same way as alcohol. There's just no scientific standard. I know that there's some laws that are trying to get passed
Yep.
there to get different tests out
Right.
there, but again, it's impairment. So I always tell everybody the same thing: have a good time. If football season's coming up and you want to have a beer or two, or you want to smoke a joint or whatever it is that suits your fancy,
Sure, right.
just don't get behind the wheel.
Right,
There's
yeah.
so many other ways to get around that
Well, and
you don't
that's-
even have to worry about it.
That was my last question for you, too, is that there are so many alternatives. With the flip of an app, I can have a ride there. Or looking at the laws that have been passed in terms of the penalties. I remember talking to you years ago, and the hope was that if we hit people in their checkbooks and their wallets, that would be a deterrent. It seems like it hasn't been.
No, and it hasn't. So we know that the thought process of maybe killing somebody or something, that's never really worked. And it's kind of weird to say it out loud, but that's kind of the fact. Always was the money part of it. And that's through different state police agencies across the country. We're all seeing the same thing. But even then, maybe we're not taking enough money out of somebody's wallet to make it go through the process. And I think, too, maybe if we go through the court systems and we start not taking away points and maybe putting some points back onto people's driving
Sure.
records, maybe getting that
A little harsher
insurance-
blow.
a little harsher blow to it that people might think twice about, when their insurance, Jake from State Farm, he watches that driving record, right? So if he's watching that driving record and all of a sudden you've got so many on there and then your insurance goes through the roof,
Right.
Maybe that's enough for somebody that says, you know what? Maybe I should drive 70. Maybe I should put my seatbelt on. And maybe I should put the phone down.
Right. Okay, Lieutenant Mike Shaw, MSP. Thanks for your time, man. Good to see you
Absolutely.
again. Thank you much.